Thank you. This is so different. I've been in, I think, about 15 different iMedias in like the last 11 years. This is the first time I've actually been on the stage as opposed to in your seats. Very different view. It's a lot more fun out there. You can hide. I am so thrilled to be here. Actually, it took me forever, it felt like, to actually get here. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be here yesterday. Then my flight landed 20 minutes early, only to sit 35 minutes on the tarmac because the gate was occupied. Then for whatever reason, there was traffic. So I actually missed all the Cirque du Soleil stuff, although I followed all of the tweets coming from the hashtag. Those of you who were tweeting, thank you for keeping me plugged in. I heard that the Pinterest presentation was phenomenal. And I actually sent a note to our Pinterest rep and said, how come I didn't see any of that when we last connected? So we're going to talk a little bit about signals. There is zero data in my presentation, zero. No data, no numbers, no trending stuff. It really is more about the concept of how we're thinking about signals completely trumping demographics. As Laurie said, I come from Campbell's. I sometimes think that my role is part like chief instigator. I think, as you said, kind of Laurie, we come in from a lot of us from the agency side, and we're kind of like aliens coming into these corporate roles where we're very different. No McKinsey background, no MBAs, but a lot of depth and breadth on understanding CPG and the different types of brands, and specifically having come from Walgreens before Campbell's, really having an appreciation for what it means to ship pallets, not just take a can off the shelf. And at the end of the day, right, we make money when we sell pallets. And that means making a customer happy, and it also means driving demand to consumers to come into aisle and take things off the shelf. So what do women want? I honestly have no idea. And I mean that. I really have no idea. Actually, in putting together this presentation, I pressure tested it against 3 different people. I pressure tested it against my ex-wife, who we are phenomenal friends, and I was like, what do you think about the deck? Am I onto something? And she's like, if you knew anything about women, we'd still be married. And I was like, ouch! She's like, but it's a good thing you're buying dinner tonight. I was like, damn it. No, seriously, we get along really well, and she's one of the people I actually generally run things by. I also ran it by a good colleague of mine who's been in the space for probably about 20 years, and she said something really profound, which is, she says, I don't even know what I want when I wake up in the morning. How the hell are you going to know what I want? And so that's a really good point. And of course, I sent it over to the iMedia team. I said, are we on strategy here? Are we on brand? She said, absolutely. So I say I have no idea. Probably one of the things I always think about, my first job in advertising, for those of you who are over 30, you will remember this. For those of you who are under 30, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. My job was to make sure that our print ads for our clients ran in the magazines we said we're going to run. And I covered the beat that was women's lit. So what that meant was in 1998, I was getting a stack of magazines from Vogue to YM and everything else in between, and making sure that our print ads ran, and then flagging them with a Post-it, indicating that they did run, and saying, yes, we don't need to get a make good from this magazine. That did 2 things for me. One, it made me extremely popular with everybody that I basically knew. They're like, hey, did you get the new Vogue? I was like, yes, I did get the new Vogue. And of course, I didn't really read the new Vogue, but I was really popular from that. The second thing was, talk about a complete appreciation for understanding your core consumer demographic, right? This is the media they're consuming. I'm consuming the exact same media. And it really actually started me off on the right path, I think, of if you want to be inside your consumer's head, then you better be doing all the things that your consumer did. Time does not allow for it because we only had 30 minutes today. But one of the things I actually had done last year, to be honest, I got into this debate over the merits of getting your legs waxed. And I said, I don't understand what the big deal is. Why do you complain about this thing all the time? She's like, maybe you should go get your legs waxed. I said, maybe I will. So we went ahead and I got my legs waxed. And after about the first pull, I said, and you do this repeatedly? Like you actually volunteered to do this? Are you out of your mind? She goes, oh, so it's not such a small thing, is it? I was like, no, it's not. And I have yet to actually bring up that topic since last summer. So I think you do have to be in a little bit in your consumer's head. Despite all that research, despite all those things, there's still things I don't understand. I don't understand why we pay $250 for shoes that cost $8 to make in Vietnam. I don't get it, never will, won't understand it. Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand the phase. It has to be a phase, right? It has to be. And the amount of money that J. Crew is making right now in basically having my office look like a Crayola crayon box completely exploded. I don't understand it, don't get it. I also don't understand maxi dresses. And I said to my fiance, I said, help me understand maxi dresses. She says, baby, I don't understand maxi dresses either. She says, they say maxi dress. I say, this hides the figure I've been working on all summer on. I said, I don't get it. They say it's comfortable. I don't understand maxi dresses. And I really don't understand this thing on Instagram where like I've done my nails and it's like, look at my nails. I did them with this specific color. Don't understand it. But I do understand Ryan Gosling. I understand me some Ryan Gosling right now. I'm going to tell you right now. Yeah, see? Catherine, did I tell you? Best lad of the whole deck, right? I understand Ryan Gosling on so many levels. I think the man is brilliant. For my wedding, I'm actually going to be rocking a midnight blue tuxedo based on the one that he wore to the Oscars last year because I think he looked fantastic. I will not look that good in that tux, but I understand Ryan Gosling. Now, here's the thing, though. I don't think any person in this room, I don't think any company understands women, though. I don't think they get it. To be fair, they don't understand millennials either. They don't understand crazy sports guys. And you know why? Because things move too damn quick. That's the thing. The pace of everything changes and moves so fast. The minute we think we know something, it completely changes. The minute we think something is on trend, it's out of trend. The minute we think something has completely passed and it's no longer in vogue, it's back in style. I saw someone wearing overalls backwards the other day, and I was like, have we really brought crisscross back? Really? Really? Are hammer pants the next thing to come back, and bum shirts and Cavariccis? I mean, it's possible. I mean, we keep bringing back, flared bell-bottom jeans every 10 years and cycle comes back. So you never know. And I think the big part of the problem is we don't use signals, kind of what I've started to call them, the right way. So let me just break down a couple things. We're going to kind of walk through a couple things that we pulled over the last 30 days about a consumer demographic, and I want you guys to pay attention to this because eventually you're going to tell me which the consumer demographic it was that did these. Got a pedicure. Red lean-in, hardcover copy, not Kindle. This is important. Watch Grey's Anatomy. Went on a diet. Has a Pinterest wedding board. Any thoughts so far? No? See me in Jimmy Choo shoes, I don't think so. I don't got the legs for that. Bought these shoes. Any thoughts? Anyone? Well, first thing is, statistically, it'd be all three of them, right? Grey's Anatomy goes from 25 to 54. Someone between 60 reaches for a pair of $700 shoes. Someone's got $100,000, spends on them anyways. If you basically bought these people on spots and dots and demographics and cookies and retargeting and et cetera, it would tell you any one of these three people is actually the person. And the person in the middle who said it was me, you are absolutely right. That is me. I bought those shoes. I got a pedicure. My feet look damn good right now, okay? I watched Grey's Anatomy on stream. I watched it on the couch. And I have a Pinterest wedding board. It's a damn good board, I'm telling you right now. It's all the things that I'm going to be doing at the wedding, okay? It has nothing to do with dresses. It has to do with my Ryan Gosling, love of that man. So here's the thing. All of your consumers, you're becoming data. It used to be that we said spots, dots, demographics. Then we went to prism segments, right? And then we went to clusters. We went to all these different things. You've been reduced to data, right? Blue Kai, this partner, that partner. Someone basically says, you are ones and zeros someplace. The problem is that ones and zeros inherently lie, okay? The TiVo box that we have in our living room records everything from Weeds all the way through to New Girl. I sit through that. I like that laugh because you get it. You know where I'm coming from. It had The Office on it. And if you were just basically pinging data off of that TiVo box, you're like, this person is all over the place, man. I mean, like, they're watching, like, Japanese anime, crazy Korean gangster fighting movies on Netflix, and they're also watching Grey's Anatomy. Like who is this person? The data oftentimes misleads. And here's the thing, though. Insights come from signals, right? Not data. They come from signals. And insights inform decisions. I don't think anyone basically would disagree with this. The key, though, is what you do with those signals. That's what actually matters, right? So every person who says big data, big data, big data, fantastic. You've accumulated data. You have a library of CDs that you're no longer listening to. Great, you got lots and lots of data. It's what you do with those signals that ultimately matters. Inside of 60 seconds, there's a lot of data that gets created. I mean, a ridiculous amount of data. Think about your own habits, right? Inside of 60 seconds, we're creating a ridiculous amount of data. I sometimes think that we are data rich, we are insight poor. If you take anything away from this entire presentation today, think about this slide. Data rich, insight poor. How many vendors have you talked to today? How many have called upon you and said, I have a data solution for you. I can take your this and match it up with this and append it with this and retarget that and cookie this and clean it through this and data, 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 data. How many of them are actually telling you this is what your data means? And not just in 6 months, not in some long, long form right now at this very second. That's really tough to do. I mean, unless you're Amazon, where you're doing billions of transactions every month, millions of transactions every minute, and you're doing all the retargeting and everything else, it's really hard to get to that for everyone else. So if you're in CPG, if you're in retail, if you're in auto, travel, hospitality, I feel for you. I worked in all those different disciplines in my agency career. Data rich, insight poor. An individual tweet is not a signal. Now, I love it, right? Because we're all marketers. So you see like someone does something amazing with your product and tweets it, and you share that tweet, and you're like, look what they're doing with our product. This is so awesome. We've got to move on that. Maybe. And believe me, I have to like sometimes pull myself back away from the laptop, Adam, put the mouse down. It's not a signal. But many tweets, when filtered, when structured, can be a really powerful signal for determining what you should do next. Now, the strength of signals has changed. And about 3.5 years ago, I ran into probably one of my favorite colleagues they've become really good friends with. His name is Paul Bannis, and he works at Kraft. Paul is brilliant. Totally encourage you to look at his slides on SlideShare. One of the smartest guys, way ahead of his time 3.5 years ago. And Paul had shared with me this story of bacon. He said, we make Oscar Mayer bacon. He's like, and we had this problem. Bacon category is going up. People are buying more bacon. We're getting cut out. Can't figure it out. Doesn't make any sense. So they did what any classic organization does. They said, let's start with who's buying the bacon, right? Let's pull IRI data. Let's pull Nielsen data. Let's see who's actually buying the bacon. And what did they find out? Okay, stop me if you've heard this one. Women, 25 to 54, who love their kids who are time-starved. Can you name me someone who's not 25 to 54, independent of kids, who's not time-starved? That's a spot in the dot. That's a demographic. That's a cluster. That's a quartile. That's not a really good signal. But as we've been trained to do, we started with where the transaction was happening, and we worked our way back. So they went into focus groups. And they took these women. They said, tell us about bacon. They're like, I don't know. It's bacon. Well, what does bacon make you feel? It doesn't make me feel like anything. It's bacon. Well, how do you use it? Well, breakfast. So they said, oh, okay, well, we got to increase more usage occasions, right? If I can get you to use bacon more, you're going to buy more bacon, we're going to fix this whole entire problem, right? I hear the laughs because we've all been in this meeting before, right? Well, that basically led to hitting a wall, right? So they're like, okay, we're going to advertise our bacon on hamburgers. We're going to advertise it in salads. We're going to get into that lunch mode. And that didn't work. It had nothing to do with it. So after about 8 months of trying this out and things not working, they said, well, we got to think about this a different way, right? We need a different change. We got to think about how we attack this problem. And Paul Bannis at the time, he's a director of consumer insights, kind of considered this crazy guy at the time. He's like, what if we said forget that IRI data? What if we said forget that scan data? Like, you mean forget the scan data, okay? That's how we determine shipments, and that's how we know things are working. He's like, I got a hunch on this thing called social media. Social media, those people posting photos on Facebook? I don't know what the hell they're talking about. On Friendster? It's crazy. He's like, well, look, what you're doing ain't working. That's a good point. Let's try it out. So one of the first things Paul found when they started to look for information on bacon was there was a lot of conversation about Kevin Bacon. And if you think about actually the way our algorithms have evolved over the last few years with social, you almost had to figure out a way to manually remove Kevin Bacon posts. And even today, if you type in bacon in Google, the majority of stuff is Kevin Bacon. 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon's IMDb, his Wikipedia page. He'll His first attempt at basically solving this did not go so well because of a lot of Kevin Bacon. But as they filtered into it, he started to realize something really interesting. The majority of conversation, the passion, right? I think we talk about that hot molten center of a brand connection when it comes to bacon is from guys. They create crazy t-shirts and they spend $30 on this t-shirt. You can buy it too. It's on Uncrate. It's 30 bucks. Bacon is the duct tape of the kitchen. They do things like this, like an iPhone case holder or bandages. My son John, he's 4. He loves his bacon bandages. He's like, look, I have bacon. This is what we do. There's bacon jerky. There's bacon board shorts. This is what they basically find. It's like, this is interesting. Guys might actually play a role in influencing purchases that happen. They were like, that's preposterous. We know all the data. We've done panel surveys. We know that, I think as Lori said, 40% of buying decisions are done by women. These men, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's crazy. I said, well, there might be something with bacon, though, specifically with bacon. So they actually talked with guys, and they said, do you like bacon? Like, oh, we love bacon. We love bacon. They're like, well, what do you do with bacon? Like, we put it on everything. We would put bacon wrapped on bacon, deep fried in bacon fat, and then put that on top of bacon. Well, what do you like about bacon? We like thick cuts. We like different flavors. All these different things. Like, they were getting rich information starting at a very different spot in the signals. So then they went back into the focus groups and talked to those women, 25 to 54, who have kids, who love their husbands and are time-strapped. And they said, why don't you cook more bacon? And now we get to 3 things. The first, it stinks up my house. I cook it, I fry it, my house smells like bacon for a week. The second, I hate touching it. It's disgusting. It's slimy. I've got to wash my hands with soap for 4 hours just to get it off. 3, it splatters like crazy. You know what that's like to clean up? So classic product design, they said, let's create a product that means you don't ever have to touch bacon, that reduces the smell and reduces the splatter. So they came up with this product short term. It was bacon that kind of hangs, and it's in a tray with it collects all the grease at the bottom. You actually put it in the broiler. Didn't sell so well. But the insight was good, right? Like, essentially, you changed the way the signals went. And what they realized was it wasn't even about that there are certain moments, certain things that we all kind of splurge on for our family. And in the case of this, there are a couple of things that we basically allow our spouses, our significant others, be they male or female, whoever's doing the shopping, to basically have. It's that splurge moment. And for guys, it was bacon. So they said, you know what? Maybe what we should be doing is targeting men with advertising, letting them influence the purchase, and let's see what ends up happening. So they did a whole entire campaign against men. And I love this campaign. I actually participated in it. I don't know if any of you saw this. It was last year. It's called the Great Bacon Bar. They gave a guy an entire van full of Oscar Mayer bacon. You had to get from one end of the country to the other end of the country with no money, just trading bacon. So you would say, hey, I'm going to give you 5 cases of bacon if you let me crash on your couch tonight. Guy at the gas station, how about you give me a free full up of gas? I give you a sampler pack. How to trade bacon to get from one end of the country to the other. Brilliant. What ends up happening after this campaign, some other initiatives? Bacon category still is going up. Their share increases. Now, the key takeaway here is not that guys are important or that women are important or that moms are important. The key here is if all you do is start at the very end of your event chain for your signals, all you'll do is work back sequentially, and you'll never really get to that perfect moment, that amazing aha that happens when you go, this is the signal to focus on. And there's too many data points that are out there, too much data being created, you're all data. So when I got to Campbell, like I said, I learned this from Paul about 3 years ago. We used the same kind of a model at Walgreens, and when I got to Campbell, I said, when we think about our role of social, it's not about content. Content's great, and believe me, we do that, and we do it well. It's not about community management. We do that too, or customer care, training founders and response. The biggest thing we can do for our organization is enable our organization to move quicker, smarter, and better with insights that matter from signals that are impactful. So these are the 4 things we focus on. This is our model. We have the plan. We have the signals. We have the platforms and the tools, and we have the KPIs. Seems simple. I'm going to break it down for how we've actually used it when we launched Go Soup. Lori, by the way, I know you like our microwavable chunky. I am telling you right now, Go out and get the Go soup. It's at the Walgreens 2 blocks down here. It's phenomenal. And our skillet sauces. 2 completely brand new products in completely different types of packaging, different flavor profiles, targeted at a completely different audience. Now, sometimes it takes a product like this that's so transformationally different for an organization for them to say, maybe we got to think about the signals a little bit differently. I don't know if we could have done it with Chunky. I know for sure we could have done it with this because we had no historical data. It's a new product with a new category with a new audience. So the first thing was the plan. And we said, here's what we want to know in social. Where are they finding it? One of the biggest questions when we launched this product, stores didn't know where they were going to put it. Well, it's soup, but it's soup in a bag. I don't really have a shelf set for that, so they put it everywhere. Do they like the packaging? New packaging. Do they actually like the product, and how are they using it? The usage occasions was key. So the where they finding it was fascinating because I can give you the greatest ad in the world. If you go into your local Jewel, Wegmans, Walgreens, doesn't matter where you go, you can't find it, doesn't work, right? So we actually used a combination of partners and platforms. We actually relied a lot, though, on Instagram data merged with Foursquare data. When someone would actually find the product, we actually told people, when you find the product, upload a photo on Instagram, check in, let us know where it is, and then we can get a feel for, okay, is this matching up with our ACV? Is this matching up with the velocity we're seeing in terms of shipments going to specific retailers? And oh, by the way, it was. And where are you finding it, and how much are you finding it for? It actually allowed us to make sure that it was being priced right and put on the shelf in the right space. And in terms of the signals, we said, well, there's 4 key things we need to look at. Social's big, and that's great, and don't get me wrong, there's great, amazing data in social. We said, well, how about something as simple as our call center? Has everyone ever thought to just flip our call center data internally, merge it with the social data, and see if we're actually seeing a trend? And what about product reviews, right? We know this stuff is being carried on Amazon and on Walgreens and on Jewel.com and Wegmans and Safeway and et cetera. Let's actually take product reviews. And then there was the scan data. Is this stuff moving, and which flavors are moving, and to what level, and who are they being bought by? Are they being bought 3 at a time or 4 at a time? These 4 different areas of data, these signals, we put together, we weighted them accordingly, and we said this will give us an idea of what's happening and what we need to do to adjust with the speed we need to adjust with. And then came the machines, the platforms. We used Spreadfast. Spreadfast was great for us to be able to see real-time conversation of what was happening in terms of people finding the product, their aha moment, or as Google calls it, the zero moment of truth moment, when they are learning about the product or they're trying the product out. We used Crimson Hexagon, probably the best, in my opinion, partner for understanding social data. Unmetric to get some competitive benchmarking. Curelate, phenomenal platform built into both the Pinterest and Instagram APIs that gives you a better understanding of what's being shared visually. And a lot of people, think about it, right? How many of you last night went out to eat and you took a photo of what it was you were eating? You were like, I'm eating short ribs with this. Look at me. I'm a rock star. And there is that rock star moment. That's why we share the food that we're there. We want people to know this thing's awesome. I did it last night. Guilty. It was a beer. But Curelate helped us understand how people were using the product, right? We could see, were they putting it in the bowl? Were they eating it out of the package? Were they putting it in a cup? Were they making 3 at a time? What were they doing with these creations? And we used Field Agent. For those of you who don't know what Field Agent is, killer platform. It's crowdsourcing and getting people into the store to find your product, to take pictures of your shelf set, to report back on pricing, and it's all happening in real time. So for those of you in CPG and in retail, you might work with a broker like Acosta to do this. That might take you 6 months to maybe get the data that you want. Field Agent, you're seeing it pour in the same day. Like that, it's just happening. So those of you who have heard of TaskRabbit, Field Agent is TaskRabbit for CPGs and retails. Go out, find our product, take a picture, upload it, tell us what the price was, and we get to actually see what the shelf set looks like. Not after the retailer has set up the store beautifully. We get to see what it's actually happening in real time. Now, all those things are great, but if you don't have the right model for what you're going to do with the data, it all starts to fall apart, right? So the first was daily action points. We said there are daily things we want to look at, things every single day to give us a barometer of good, bad, or ugly. Every week, an integrated team from the brand to consumer insights to digital to social, global advertising, the shopper marketing team got together to review the actual insights we were calling out. Not data, not like, hey, we got 72 tweets. 72 tweets is not an insight. That's a data, that's a metric, it's a data point. The insight was what's happening. What are we seeing as a trend? And then there were monthly KPIs, and the reason we chose monthly is it actually corresponded with scan data that was coming in the store. It made a lot of sense to aggregate those pieces in there. But that was the model that we used to understand. And I can tell you that we're now taking that data, we're applying that data for all the future campaigns that we're doing now in F14, whether it is an established brand like Chunky or new brands that are coming out the pipe, in the next 3 or 4 months. We learned so much with this model, and I could tell you probably the single biggest thing that we learned, it definitely takes a village. And like I said, I'm not sure we could have gotten to it the speed we got into it had it not been a new product in a new category with a new target audience. But I would impress upon you, does not matter what the data is that you capture. Even if all you have is one data signal, if you don't know what you're going to do with that data, you're back into this mode of just collecting and collecting and collecting, and you're sitting on it, and you almost start to lose credibility within the organization of what you can do with that data. You have to have a plan for what to do with the data. Okay, so if you were from all the stuff that we just went through, I know we went through it a little bit fast. The slides will be available. A couple things I would tell you to think about. The first, we are living in a world of quantified lives. Everything we do is being quantified and measured all the time. Some of us are even doing it by choice. I've got a jawbone up right now that's telling me I did not get enough sleep last night and I really need to get my butt outside and start walking because I'm not hitting my goal for that. Those of you who have a Nike Fuel Band, the same exact thing. There are people who are creating products right now that every time you twist the cap off, it actually records the weight that's left in there, and it tells you when you actually need to go to the store. Everything that we're doing right now is quantified, which creates a rich data set to pull from. But a rich data set that's not actionable is a useless data set. The second, when you set this world up, when you think about this, you end up in a model where you have to get everyone aligned that the insight is better than the opinion. The N of one, the person who says, well, I showed this ad to my daughter last night. And I got to tell you, she doesn't like the color purple. And for those of you on the agency side, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Those of you who have worked on the agency side, you definitely know what I'm talking about. Or when you say, I don't like this product, I don't like the way it tastes. It needs more pepper, or it needs more salt, or it needs more of this. And but it tested really well. We literally test this with thousands of people. They like it. I don't know if we like it. I just don't know how I feel about it. The insight always trumps the opinion. And you got to know what you want to do with the insight. And in this model, garbage in will always equal garbage out. It's not a question. If you are pulling from the wrong data source at the wrong time with the wrong model, you will never be happy with the actionable next steps that you potentially might want to do. Rethink the value of your signals, right? In a lot of organizations right now, looking back on what you've done and what you've done for the last 30 or 50 years, it's always the easiest thing to do, right? How many of you are still using a marketing mix model that's based on econometric data as opposed to an ecosystem data? Or something else that's completely new. And they say, why would we change the marketing mix model? Well, we know it works. Okay? If it works, then every model would actually yield the same exact sales volume that you said you were going to get. And I bet you if you match up your sales volume against what the model says, there's probably a delta. Delta might be positive, might be negative, but something's probably needed to be evolved within that actual model. Trust the data. Let it lead your gut. Now, this is a key one. We have good instincts. Right? You went to school. You worked on a piece of business. You've seen things. Right? You got good instincts that are on there. When the instincts lead the data, you end up with a bad model. When the data leads your gut, you end up being able to move quick. And you make that really good moment where all of a sudden you have a split second to bet left, right, up, down. Add more money into this, pull back. When you combine the real data with the gut, man, magic happens. I always tell people like this, don't forget the human element. That's where that gut piece comes into it. And in a classic case of when I say the human element, you set up this whole model. You rely completely just on the data. In that example of the shoes and the Pinterest board and the Grey's Anatomy and everything else, you'd be targeting me with your ads. Really what you're trying to do is connect with the woman that you thought you were trying to connect with. That's what happens when the machines get into the way. When you start adding the human element into it, you start actually investing in looking at this stuff. When you bring people into the fold, everything gets a little bit better. And the last thing, this is iterative. Right? So we're learning as we go. I don't know anyone who's got this entire thing solved. But I do believe you cannot fix things, you cannot improve them, you cannot enhance them unless you have a model. Something that goes from here to here, and you know what aspect of the model to adjust, to modify, to enhance, to eliminate. it's iterative. If you don't think about it in an iterative context, if you think about it in a set it and forget it context, you're doing the exact opposite of what the model was intended to go ahead and do. Thank you.
So, first of all, I'm looking forward to my case of soup.
Done.
So I can, thank you. All right, you got to get something, right? So any questions for Adam? We have some time for questions. Anyone? I have one just to kick this off. I was just curious, you know, because one of the conversations I get into with a lot of colleagues at brands is, you know, how do you keep innovating? How do you keep thinking about these insights so that your brand doesn't get stale, you know, and you don't end up closing down because you didn't continuously innovate? So when you're looking at insights, how often are you doing that? Because you could make yourself crazy with going in different directions all the time. So how do you manage that beast of new insights?
Yep. It's a great question. So we work with a lot of partners, right? We have a media agency, a creative agency, a digital agency. We have our internal teams. And one of the things we really try to standardize from the start to the finish, let's get everyone just using the same platform. Let's not have the agency using Radian 6, but we're using Crimson Hexagon, and these guys are using this. Right off the bat, you end up with 4 different sets of insights, and you start basically chasing 4 different potential prospects to focus on. When in reality, if everyone was using the same data set with the same platform, you're really starting from a good spot. That's the first thing. The second is we're very choiceful in what we call an insight versus data. And they're 2 completely different things. Even a KPI is different than an insight. And I will tell you, it took a while for us to kind of get up to speed with that, that really strong focus on let's use these words right. When we call something an insight, it means you need to think about this and make a decision on what to do. A data point, you've already determined what your KPIs are, and it's almost like autopilot in terms of what you would do next. The insight should get you to pause, internalize, ingest, and then choose what to do next. And I think that choiceful architecture of what these things mean has probably helped us the most.
Cool. Anybody over there? All right, well, I have another one. Anybody over here? I was also curious, so you're sitting here looking at all these insights and you're attacking them. Do you guys have a budget put aside for R&D around this stuff? Or have you gotten it to the point where you're budgeting for new thinking?
So probably one of my favorite things about the way, all the way from the top down, we've thought about the way we need to think about things is one, we call it the dual mandate. One is protect the core. Right? You don't want to completely ignore the core. Right? It's some large percentage of where you're going. But make sure you've got that foot planted and ready to go in the right direction for the future. And when we think about the way we support the organization, the way we've orchestrated our team, we've tried to deliver on those 2 things. How can we align our resources, people, process, dollars, agencies, things like that, in a way that protects the core, but gives the right air cover to actually go down and you go down a rabbit hole. Sometimes the rabbit hole leads you to absolutely nowhere. And I think you have to be okay with that. And that's where that model comes in. You have to be able to say, listen, some of these things we're going to make decisions on and we may not be right. But because we have the right model, we're able to iterate ever faster. And I think that's the key, right? Where you're not waiting 6 months for your hunch, you're waiting 6 minutes, 6 hours, 6 days, not 6 months.
Oh, we have a question. Catherine, you want to run? You're younger.
I'm Noreen. I'm from IMI in San Diego. And I was just wondering if you work with the research and development team in the early stages before you start marketing a product. So how early do you get involved?
Yep. There's a fine line between, I want to get, really early into it, right? Having been in this space for about 15 years and just being a geek. Part of I feel like why some of us got into this space, it just excites us. So there's a part of me that's geeky. I want to be, all the way in the beginning stages. And there's a good rigor you have to have in an organization. We say, listen, you're in an I mode. We're going to inform you what's going on. I don't need your advice just yet. You have to be okay with that. And I tell you, for someone like me who's go, 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 who's on his 4th Red Bull this morning, that's really tough to do. That said, I think the organization as a whole, as we've enabled them with the right resources, with the right platforms and probably that right model, we've gotten a little bit more comfortable with where we insert us. So I can't speak about the specific product, but it will be launching in a couple of months. but we actually got into even the naming of the product, where we thought we should call it this. Then we actually went and looked at Google Trend data to see what people were calling it when they were searching to make the recipe. We're like, wow, we're describing the product the way that we made the product, not how someone's going to potentially be intending to use it. So we actually then tested that hypothesis, and we ended up with someplace in the middle in terms of actually what to call the product, which was probably like a really cool, honestly, it was probably one of the coolest moments for me in my first year at the organization, because it meant we were thinking about this model the right way, far upstream, but not before you would have used that data to determine what should be in the actual product. Someone else was way smarter to say, this is on trend, it's on target, it's going to sell well, we're going to ship cases and pallets. That's what they do, and they do it really well. My job is to help them make a more informed decision. And the other parallel to that, and like similar but not exactly aligned to product development, how many of you hate QR codes? Part of, I think, why we hate QR codes is the poor use of QR codes. Like I saw one on a bus in New York the other day, which made absolutely no sense. Like, how am I going to snap that thing? And so we had a lot of debate, for example, of what the role is of a QR code on our packaging. He said, well, it depends on what you want the person to do. So if we want to enhance what they're already doing with the product, we think about the QR code behind the packaging, back of the pack. It's already in your house. Therefore, what you're linking to should be something that enhances. If we want it to be something that's a selling proposition, we want to tell you about how to use it, how to get a coupon, how to get it into your basket, things like that, it goes on the front of the pack. But that actually came from some of the insight data that we were doing in partnership with some of our customers that said this is how consumers are actually using QR codes. Not that I think QR code penetration is going to be 98%, but it's like something that subtle gets now you into package design. And all that data is out there. We see what people are doing, how they're taking pictures. We see what they're saying about QR codes. My favorite example was not from our product, but a consumer who said, I don't understand why this QR code is taking me to a 7-minute video, in a store that has no cell signal. Like, you gotta think about those steps, right? And like I said, like if you think about that model ahead of time, it's a lot easier to optimize it.
Hey, Adam, good morning. George Potts from Bruner. You talked about acting on signals, trusting your gut, going down the rabbit hole. But you're now on the client side. You're at Campbell's. You're in a culture that allows you to do that. You're building a culture that allows you to do that. At Walgreens, you had an impact on that culture that allowed you to do that. But you used to be on the agency side. And you know how conservative brand managers can be, brand directors who are only in their position for 12 to 18 months. They don't want to rock the boat. They just want to keep their market share, not necessarily want to act on signals, go down a rabbit hole. If you were on the agency side again today, what advice do you give to agency professionals like myself to help move a client in that type of direction, also knowing there's a family of agencies all sitting at the table trying to grab a piece of that pie?
So the first thing I would say, George, you should come work for me. Clearly. But no, I think what you're asking is, it's something I deal with too, right? I mean, like I work directly with brand managers, general managers, the CMO. I mean, like it's a wide, large, complex organization. There are two things I learned so I actually started out agency side, then I went client side, then I went back agency side, and went back client side. And I've kind of applied different learnings throughout. And probably the first thing I learned going client side the first time, there's a whole business side of this thing that agency folks, I feel like, don't take the time to learn. For example, when the price of corn goes up 3 cents, doesn't seem like a lot. When you're buying tons upon tons of corn to put into product, now you either have to erode at margin, or to protect margin, you got to take that dollar spend out of someplace else. So on the agency side, you're like, why are you taking my advertising dollars down? Why did you kill this website redesign project, right? If you had the business acumen, you'd go, I get it. Like you're not saying the work isn't good, you're understanding my business. And it seems like an overused, I think, axiom to say, you have to understand my business. But how many agency folks actually take this time to understand the business? I mean, most agencies, have even removed, think about the training programs you used to have on account management. You used not to be able to be an account coordinator until you graduated from the internship program, went through we've eroded some of those. So the first thing I would say is focus on the business. The second, you have to be willing as the agency to share in either some of the failure or set up the right model to be, what I would say is, encouraged and awarded accordingly for some of the success. So one of the things we ask our agencies is this. If you're bringing something new to the table that's going to make us uncomfortable, that's what we want you to do. We also want you to help us understand how confident you are it's going to work. And if something is a complete guess based on some minor insight, probably doesn't get ever sold through. If it's a guess based on really good insights, show us how you're putting the skin into the game. And sometimes that's, you know what, guys? We're going to basically do this program at literally cost, but if it takes off where we go, we want a different compensation model for it. Second piece. The third, and I think this is the hardest thing to balance, it's the toughest thing for any agency team to do, you have to somehow navigate your day-to-day person who's probably a brand manager, and the person, though, who is actually responsible for the entire agency relationship architecture. Two completely different things. I had a boss at a company who said, at every organization, there is the resistant middle. The VP and the CMO says, innovate, innovate, innovate. The brand manager who's on the business, who's looking at weekly shipments and monthly case volume, is focused on right now. They're the one who says, drop the FSI, make it happen. I don't know if there's a silver bullet to it, but I think the better you can elevate a conversation that says, this is how we're driving your business, both short-term and long-term, and this idea we have is not a short-term solution, but is a long-term build, the better you'll be, I think, and be able to position those ideas and making the client feel comfortable with taking on the risk.